Hey, thanks for joining me. If you've been watching my channel for a while now, you probably know that I'm a pretty big fan of DJI drones and actually their cameras for many years now. And I bought actually their original Maverick Pro drone and the original Osmo Pocket camera back when I started this channel. And I've since upgraded that original Mavic Pro to the Mavic Air 2 because it was small and light, and then the Air 3, which is still small and light, but also extremely high quality. And then I've just recently jumped into the FPV drone experience with this DJI Avata 2 drone that just came out, I think, sometime last year. And man, let me tell you, I never realized how much more fun and different the flying experience of an FPV drone is versus these camera drones. But if I'd have known that, I think I would have jumped on that train a long time ago. These are just, all of this is just amazing tech, and they're just ridiculously easy to fly with and get great results. And then I also upgraded my old GoPro 10 action cam that I'd use from time to time. I upgraded that to DJI's new Action 5 Pro cam. And I bought this just a few months ago, right before my New Mexico, Arizona trip. And if you want to see how good this video is on this kind of camera, go check out my other channel, Re-Ray Every Day, and check out some of those recent travel videos. I think I've got 2 more of those videos from that trip coming out over the next few weeks. But yeah, this thing was an absolute trooper during that trip. But the bottom line for me is that DJI just makes extremely high quality stuff. That's why I continue to be an extremely satisfied DJI customer over the course of probably 7 or 8 years. And about 3 or 4 months ago, DJI actually reached out to me and asked if I would help test and provide feedback on their newest power station product, which was currently still in development at the time. And of course I said, hell yeah, let's do that. But because it wasn't released yet, I wasn't able to talk about it until now. So this is the new DJI Power 2000. Now, if you've seen their Power 1000, which I reviewed maybe a year or so ago, you'll immediately kind of recognize the family resemblance here. It's basically the same footprint. It's about twice as tall, which makes sense because it's also twice the capacity of the original Power 1000. So let me quickly run down some of the key specs for you. It does have a lithium iron phosphate battery capacity of 2,048 watt hours, and it is rated to maintain at least 80% of its original capacity even after 4,000 full charge and discharge cycles. And that's about 30% better than most other power stations with lithium iron phosphate in this particular class. It's got a pure sine wave AC inverter rated for an impressive 3,000 continuous watts of output. And you'll notice that in addition to the 320 amp 3-prong outlets it's got on the front, it's also got a TT30 receptacle built in. And that makes it pretty easy to connect to RV and camper power systems, or maybe even a home manual transfer switch for backup power. And to that end, it actually is fully compatible with the also recently released Expansion Battery 2000, and you can actually add up to 10 of those expansions for a max total capacity of a whopping 22.5 kilowatt hours. It does have a fast 10 millisecond UPS mode, and we're going to test to make sure that's actually fast enough to keep my gaming PC behind me there running in an unexpected power outage kind of a situation. And it's got a built-in Bluetooth connectivity for the DJI Home mobile app. So it doesn't require a Bluetooth dongle for that like the Power 1000 does. But like the Power 1000, this Power 2000 also shares the same modular design, which means that the base unit here doesn't actually come with built-in DC connections for solar, car charging, or a 12-volt car socket. Those are all available as add-on accessories that you can choose to add or not, depending on your specific needs. And all of those connect to those SDC ports over here that are right on the front of the unit. Now, of course, that modular design approach is not necessarily going to be a hit with everyone, but I think the reality is that a lot of people may never utilize things like solar charging for their power stations. And if you happen to be in that camp, well, then you don't have to pay up front for a feature that you're unlikely to use. And of course, if your needs change in the future, you can always add those accessories at that point. And then if you do happen to be a drone enthusiast, like I clearly am, there's also accessory cables for these SDC ports on the Power 1000 and Power 2000s that will allow you to fast charge the drone batteries for these at a rate that is actually faster than the rate that you can deplete them while you're flying. And I can tell you that comes in pretty handy from time to time, especially if you have friends coming over and you decide to bust out the drones for some fun, only to discover that all of your batteries are at a 50% state of charge. Yeah, that may have happened to me once or twice. Now, if you happen to be heavily reliant on USB connections, this thing has definitely got you covered. There are 8 total USB ports on this, and 4 of those are fast charging 24-watt USB-A ports, and it does also have a pair of PD 65-watt USB-C ports and a pair of PD 140-watt USB-C ports. And those are particularly handy for fast charging modern high-end laptops and tablets, without having to tote around those big USB fast charge bricks that are typically required for those devices. And to finally wrap up on the specs, the Power 2000 weighs in at 48.5 pounds, or about 22 kilograms, and its dimensions are just under 18 inches wide, including these side handles. It's just under 13 inches tall, and just a hair under 9 inches deep. Okay, let's go run this new Power 2000 through the paces and see how it performs. All right, got the Power 2000 fully charged. Let's do a usable capacity test through the AC inverter. So I'm going to turn the AC inverter on. I'm going to pull about, I don't know, well, let's see where we end up here. I'd like to pull something like 700 or 800 watts, especially given this is a 3000 watt inverter. All right, we are cruising at just over 1,000 watt load. So we're going to let this run until the BMS shuts us down and the battery is fully depleted. And then we're going to find out how many usable watt hours we actually get out of that rated 2048. All right, our usable capacity test out of the AC inverter is done. Let's go ahead and connect this watt meter to grid power so we can see how we did. Oh, all right, so out of that 2048 rated watt hours, we got 1,820 watt hours. And that equates to pretty much 90% of rated capacity, which would put this particular efficiency at well above average, which would normally be somewhere around 80 to 84%. So 90%, very good number out of this Power 2000. All right, since we are charging this Power 2000, I want to point a couple things out. There's actually two charge modes right here. We are on the bottom one. So this is the slow charging mode, and that charges at just under 1,200 watts. And if I click it up there, and I do like that there's a physical button to do that, it'll start charging about 300 watts more. So just under 1,500 watts. But there's actually a super recharging mode, is what they call it. And if you go into the DJI Home app here, you can actually toggle that on. And now we've got just a hair over 1,800 watts of charging. So that will dramatically drop your charge time. And if you've got super recharge toggled on, it kind of ignores the physical button. So just be aware of that. If I turn that off, it'll go to whatever the physical button is, which is the lower charging rate of just under 1,200 watts. So if you want to extend maximum long-term service life of these battery cells and you're not in a hurry, go ahead and keep it at the slower charging rate, and that'll help you do that. All right, while we're at it here, let's go ahead and take a look at the DJI mobile app. It's called DJI Home, and you can see here I'm connected to the DJI Power 2000. I can see the state of charge. I'm currently looking at the inputs, so I'm inputting about 1,434 watts via AC. If I want to look at the outputs, I can click on that, and then all the outputs are listed. And I'm not outputting any power right now, so there's really nothing there to see. But in that little hamburger icon in the upper right-hand corner, if we click on that, that allows us to see the device info. So if I click on that, you can see the model name, serial number, capacity, all the firmware versions and all that sort of thing. If I have the expansion battery connected, which I do, you can see it's got its information there as well. So if I go down to energy management, this is where I can set a lower limit on the discharge. So if I want to make sure I never go below, say, 15%, or maybe I don't want to recharge past 90%, again, sort of thinking about the long-term service life of these battery cells, you could extend that somewhat by limiting your discharge and recharge limits there. Now, honestly, it doesn't make a huge difference, and you pay good money for these things, you might as well use them. So I'm going to just go ahead and leave those there. But if I think where this really is helpful is if you are using this as a UPS, then it might make sense to keep this at somewhere around 90% or maybe even 85%, somewhere like that. So you're not keeping it at 100% all the time. That's, I think, the most useful use case for this particular feature. And then, of course, we've got the super recharging toggle there that I mentioned before. You can go into general settings and you can set your screen timeouts and your automatic shutdown timeouts for AC and DC. And those are all controlled right in there. And then, of course, you can do firmware updates. So just a quick flyby of the DJI Home mobile app. All right, as you can see, we are fully charged. So let's do a DC output capacity test. And to do that, since I have this SDC to car socket adapter cable, I'm just going to plug that into one of the SDC ports. Doesn't really matter which one. And then I'm going to plug my tester into there. And we can see there, if I zoom in for you, we are reading 13.2 volts. I'm going to try to pull a full 10 amps, which is what this cable is rated for. So let's get this test started. All right, and we're going to let that run until the BMS shuts us down. And we'll find out how many watt hours we actually get through that DC port. Now, because this is a 2000 watt hour capacity power station, and it undoubtedly is at something north of 48 volts pack voltage, it's going to have to step that down to 12 volts. So I know that's going to impact our number. Typically, these larger capacity power stations take a pretty good hit when we do the DC capacity output test. So we'll see where we end up. All right, our DC discharge capacity test is done. Let's zoom in here and see what we got. So if you can make that out, we've got 1,500 and we'll call it 45 watt hours. That's out about rated 2048, which gives us a usable capacity out of that DC port of about 75%, which is a good 5 percentage points below average, I would say. So yeah, I think this thing does take a pretty good hit on the DC outputs because it is a long duration test. As you can see there, we actually ran for almost 13 hours. And then combine that with the fact that it probably has to step down from a pack voltage of about 48 volts or so. So that does give you a pretty big hit on usable capacity out of that DC port. So just something to be aware of. All right, let's do a solar wake and charge test on this. I've got this fully depleted. So let me go ahead and turn this on. We're at 0%. Now, like the Power 500 and the Power 1000, the Power 2000 does not have a built-in solar charge controller. So DJI sells these MPPT modules here, and these have 3 XT60 inputs in them, right? And each one of these can take up to 30 volts input. And the total output capability or charge capability of this is 400 watts. So you can easily overpanel this if you want to with 3 separate, because this is basically a parallel connection. Each one of these, if you plug them in individually, you're getting parallel connections. Now I've got a single 200 watt panel that is currently wired through here. I checked the voltage. I'm getting about 22 volts, which is under the 30 volt max for each one of these ports. So the Power 2000 can actually use 2 of these modules just on solar. So that's up to 800 watts of solar by using 2 of these MPPT charge controller modules. But we're just going to see if we plug this guy in here. And by the way, there are mounting brackets that come with this that allow you to mount them to the side of the unit. So you can actually stack 2 of these on the side. So if you don't like having these loose, you can actually attach them to the side of the unit with the included hardware. But it is a separate purchase. I don't think they're terribly expensive, but these do not come with the unit, as I said. All right, so let's go ahead and plug one of these in here. It is rainy and overcast right now, so I don't think we're going to get much out of this charge controller. So we'll check back in the morning and we'll see if this thing automatically started charging at a more respectable rate tomorrow when the sun comes up. All right, it is the next morning and we are charging. So our little 200 watt panel is outputting about 105 watts right now, and we somehow managed to get to 5%. So if we were to zoom in here and take a look, it actually says 24 hours to fully charge this at the current rate of just 100 watts. So for this power station with a rated 2048 watt hours, if you were going to rely exclusively on solar for charging, you would need to be able to give it somewhere between 450 and 500 rated watts of solar in fairly clear sun, decent sky conditions in order to fully top this off in a single day. And as I said, this particular charge controller taps out at 400 watts, but you could put 2 of them. So you could put easily 800 watts on here, and that would be enough to fully charge this unit by itself in well under a full day of decent sky conditions or a full day of less than ideal sky conditions. Or it would get you fairly close if you put a 2000 watt hour expansion battery on here with 2 of these modules, would get you fairly close to being able to charge this plus the, doubling the capacity with the expansion battery in a full day of sun. All right, let's do a load test on this Power 2000. Now, according to the specs, this thing is capable of sustaining 3,000 watts, which I'm a little surprised by, but we're going to find out if that's true. So I've got the TT30 here connector. I've got that cabled into the manual transfer switch on my barn. So I'm going to start switching some loads over, and when we trip this thing, it should be very obvious because the lights are going to go out because I'm going to be powering basically the whole barn on this. We're going to see if we can get that full 3,000 watts. And if we can get very close to that, we'll see if it'll run that for 10 minutes and then find out what it takes to actually trip this thing. And then along the way, I'm going to set my decibel meter down here, and we're going to keep an eye on that to find out how noisy or quiet this thing is. And it's going to be loud while I'm talking, but we'll kind of monitor that during the course of the time lapse on this load test. So let's start adding some load. I guess the first thing I need to do is turn on the AC inverter. Right, AC inverter is on. All right, let me start switching some loads. All right, we are now running the tack room here, which is where I've got my lab set up. Let me run the high bay lights. That'll add another 1,000 watts or so. All right, let's go ahead and add some load through here. I'm actually doing some construction work, and I have some of my outlets disabled on the barn, so I can't pull it all through here. I'm going to have to add some through here. All right, so we are up to 2,100 watts. Let's see where this gets us. That is rapidly climbing. Oh, that is very close. All right, let's start the timer and see where we end up. All right, we made it 10 minutes, and we are running strong at just about anywhere from 45 to 50 watts below that rated 3,000. I didn't see it while I'm not talking. The decibel meter was basically registering below 64 decibels the whole time. Let me lean in here so you can hear what the fan sounds like. All right, it's a pretty neutral white noise. It's not particularly intrusive. And by the way, this thing is generally extremely quiet. Anytime you're running this thing well below 2,000 watts, I've never heard the fans kick on. So this is actually the first time I've heard the fans, but I have to be running full out in order to do it. Let's find out where the trip point is. Let's take that up a little bit further. We're gonna go ahead and start a timer. Take it up another 100 watts. We're gonna find out what it lets us get away with. All right, 87 to 95 watts overrated for 30 seconds. Let's take it up another 100. All right, we're almost 200 watts over that rated 3,000. It's now complaining. Imagine a shutdown is imminent. I don't know if you can hear that beep. Well, we're coming up on a full minute since that beep started. But it has not given up the ghost yet. It's still showing 3,800 or 3,188 watts. All right, so it's pretty clear that we're not actually outputting any power, but it is kind of stuck showing you where it shut off. And it's got an overload here, error 62. Let me just see if I can reset it here. By shutting it down. If you can hear a little bit of white noise in the background, that would be the rainstorm that I've got going on right now, beating on the metal roof of the barn. Let's see if turning it back on recovers. All right, AC inverter's back on, and it looks like we're starting to output again. There we go. So recovery's pretty simple, just power cycle it, turn the AC inverter back on. All right, so definite pass, 3,000 watts. I was actually skeptical. I thought this thing was going to really top out at something like maybe 2,400 watts. But no, you get the full 3,000 watts out of this Power 2000. So don't let the name fool you. It's a 3,000 watt inverter. So that's extremely impressive. And it has a little bit of overhead. Gave us a couple hundred watts past that before it finally tripped. So, like I said, definite pass. All right, let's find out how noisy or clean the AC inverter output is from this Power 2000. And this thing is dusty because I've been using it for construction all week. All right, so I've got my crotchety old guitar amp here. And that is what we're going to plug into this so we can get a nice audible indicator of how much noise this AC inverter produces. All right, we are plugged into grid power. Let's hear how noisy this amp is on clean grid power first. All right, relatively quiet. Just a little bit of a pop and a low hum. Let me switch this over to the inverter on the Power 2000. All right, the AC inverter is on the Power 2000. Let's repeat the test and see if it sounds any different. Yeah, that's fairly different. I will have boosted that volume so you can hear that clearly, but there's definitely a noticeable noise introduced into amplification systems. So this is not by itself going to be a suitable solution if you wanted to use it for remote amplification, PA systems, guitar amps, or ham radios, things like that. For that application, you'd probably have to have a line conditioner in order to be able to use this without ending up with a bunch of noise coming out of the sound system. So just something to be aware of. All right, I've been framing out my new workspace here in the horse barn workshop conversion for the past several days here, and I've been using this thing pretty much exclusively as my power source because I had to take away all my electric over here and shut it down because I have to rewire a bunch of stuff. So this Power 2000 has been doing the job, and I think I started with about 40% state of charge, and I'm still at 9% state of charge. So, but I've been running this compressor, this little chop saw, the shop vac, and I've been running it all off of the Power 2000. So just to show you, I've got everything plugged in right now. I'm gonna go ahead and turn on the compressor here. No problem, it's all running right off of there. While the compressor's running, started that up just fine. Let's try the shop vac. No problem. Finally tripped it. I wondered if the Hercules saw was going to do it or not. I don't know if that was because I had the compressor running at the same time. Let's go ahead and turn off the compressor. Let's reset the AC here. Also probably not helping that I'm only at 9% state of charge. But let's see if it'll run the Hercules. Yeah, so I'm not really surprised because this thing is a workhorse. So just not the compressor and the 12-inch miter saw at the same time. So if one of your use cases for a power station is to be able to run all your power tools, this guy's getting it done. All right, let's wrap up with some final thoughts on this DJI Power 2000. I did run it through an AC inverter no-load draw test, and it seems to consume a very miserly 0.8% of the overall stated charge per hour, and that equates to an impressively low 16.4 watts continuous. And that's especially impressive considering that it is a 3,000 watt inverter, not a 2,000 or a 2,400 watt inverter. And I guess that number shouldn't be all that surprising given that excellent 90% efficiency number that we saw during the AC capacity test. Now, in preparation for these final comments here, I went back and reviewed my test clips, and I realized that I neglected to mention the AC output voltage. And I know for some of you guys out there, it's an important spec. And much to my surprise, it turns out that the Power 2000 outputs 110 volts and not 120 volts. And the reason I was surprised is that both its smaller siblings, the Power 1000 and the Power 500, did test at 120 volts. So I'm not sure why in this bigger version DJI chose to go with a 110 volt inverter. But I will tell you, and I do wish I had recorded this for evidence, but even under heavy loads, the voltage on this never drops even 1 full volt. It's extremely stable output. And like I said in that Power Tools test clip, I've been using this thing to power all of my shop tools for the past couple of weeks, and it literally runs everything that I can throw at it. So while I know that some of you 120 volt purists out there are likely to see this as a possible deal breaker, I can truthfully say that I'm not even a little bothered by this, actually. Now, if there was a lot of voltage drop under load, then yeah, I would be bothered too. But as I said, it's very stable at 110 volts, and it's just really a non-issue as far as I'm concerned. Okay, since I did talk about the modular design considerations in the intro, I won't rehash all that except to say that DJI does have a really extensive set of optional accessories for their power series of power stations, including a bunch of different cable adapters, battery expansion modules, solar charge controllers, a couple of different choices for DC to DC fast chargers, including this 1.8 kilowatt super fast charger that actually lets you combine up to 600 watts from your car's 12 volt system and then up to 1200 watts of solar in combination. And yeah, you do pay extra for these things, but it does really let you customize the specific functionality that's important to you. All right, finally, let's briefly cover warranty and price. The Power 2000 does come with a full 5-year warranty, as you would expect. And since DJI is a very well-established company, that 5-year warranty actually does mean something, since you do know that they're going to be around to honor that warranty in the unlikely event that you ever have to rely on it. And it's unlikely because, as I said in the intro, pretty much everything DJI sells is extremely well engineered and well made. Now, as far as pricing goes, unfortunately at the time that I'm recording this, they still haven't released that important detail, but I did get the strong impression that they are planning some early release deals and also a discount code that would presumably make those deals even more attractive. So I'll update that information down in the video description below just as soon as I have it. It might be there now, so go check and see if it's there. But hopefully you found something in the video useful or informative in some way. And if you did, I'd very much appreciate it if you click on that like button down below for me. And please do let me know in the comments section if you have any remaining questions about this Power 2000, and I'll do my best to respond. So thanks for spending some of your valuable time with me today, and I do hope you'll consider coming back soon and joining me for the next one. Until then, have fun out there.